hello there. It's your girl, Valerie Mason Chase again. And as you can see, I'm flying solo this evening. The Cookie Man, he's all caught up in his football again. We may not have him back with us until after the Super Bowl. So y'all kind of stuck with me this week. And I think the Super Bowl is sometime in February. But until then, it's just your girl, Valerie Mason Chase. So I just want to welcome you back to Marriage Beyond the Breach. I appreciate you being here with us this evening. And as always, I'm asking that you like, share, subscribe. And when you subscribe, hit on that little notification bell so that you can be notified about future broadcasts. Well, we have a very, very special episode for this evening. I mean, all of my guests are special, but everybody's special to me. But she's really, really special. And by proxy, since she's married to him, he's special too. Okay? So let me tell you first why I selected this particular topic. I know individuals who have engaged in cross-cultural marriages, and I've always wondered what are the specific, if any, challenges that might be unique to that particular set of circumstances. And the couple that I have on this evening, they absolutely are a cross-cultural couple. So without further ado, hey, Jackie, without further ado, I'm going to bring them on. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, just put it in the chat. We welcome your questions. We welcome your comments. And listen, if you know some Spanish, you could write Spanish in the comments too. That'll be an extra plus, okay? Because like I said to my guests, I'm from Brooklyn, so I know about this much Spanglish. That's all I know. As my nephew put it, I know enough how to go to the corner bodega and order what I want. Beyond that, I don't know it. Okay, so let me bring on this dynamic couple. Hello, Sarah and Eliudis.
Hello.
So nice to see you. And so I thank you again so much. For those of you who are watching, Sarah Ensslen, I will undoubtedly at some point end up calling her Professor Ensslen because she was my professor at Cairn University. That's where I first met her, I think back in 2018 or so. And my entire experience with her at school, I just absolutely fell in love with her. I have a tendency, I gravitate towards people who have kind and gentle and sweet spirits. And that she definitely fits into that category. And since Brother Eliudis was able to capture her, then I'm assuming he's got a kind, sweet spirit as well. So before we get into any questions or anything, I want to read their bios. Okay, so I'm going to read first. Eliudis Padilla Vega is a pastor in Calle, Puerto Rico. Through LIDDI, he has had a heart for and has been involved in missions since the age of 18, when he went to the heart of the Amazon for a month to learn how to minister to the Warao people. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
The Warao.
Warao. And they are an indigenous Amerindian people. At the age of 28, Eliudis decided to commit himself to missions full-time through his denomination. He developed an organization there called JAM, J-A-M. And in English, that is Youth in Missionary Action. And I am going to put up there's a Facebook page, and this is the name of the Facebook page. You can go to Facebook and you can join, whether you join or you like or you follow. And I just looked at it a few minutes ago, and there's English on there as well. So you don't have to know Spanish. It's not just for Spanish speaking people. At least that was my assessment when I looked at it. Would that be accurate, Sarah? That's accurate, right? Okay. So he organized JAM, where he sought to develop in youth a passion for missions as well. Between 1993 and 2019, Eliudis led more than 70 short-term mission trips with youth, and youth is in air quotes because the youth range in age from 12 to 40. So now you understand the air quotes. And he led these mission trips to India and also and to various countries in Igbo America. And Igbo America includes countries such as Brazil, Argentina, Costa Rica, and Guatemala, just to name a few, where he developed long-term relationships with missionaries and their communities. From 2010 to 2015, Eliudis was the director of missions at LDDI, during which time he visited and mentored missionaries connected to LDDI while continuing to develop and supervise new leaders of JAM. In 2014, Eliudis also began to pastor at a church in Santa Ana, Guayama, Puerto Rico, while also developing and supervising leaders of JAM and facilitating their missions trips. He also directed LDDI's National School of Missions called Ethnos, which is Ethnos,
Ethnos. Mm-hmm.
from 2009 to 2010, and again from 2016 to 2017. In 2021, Eliudis began to pastor at a church in Buena Vista Calle, while also developing a missionary selection and training program for LDDI, which prepares and equips missionaries for missionary work. Due to his passion for missions, Eliudis has also regularly been involved in the international missions organization COMIBAM. So do you just say Comibam? Comibam?
Yep. Comibam. Mm-hmm.
With its Puerto Rican branch, RECOMI.
Recomi.
Recomi. In September 2022, Eliudis married the fantabulous Sarah Ensslen, and now plans to engage in pastoral and missions work with his wife wherever God leads them. So that's Eliudis. Let me read Professor Ensslen's bio. Sarah Ensslen is a bilingual licensed professional counselor who recently moved to Puerto Rico after getting married to Eliudis Padilla Vega in September 2022. Her counseling journey began in 2008 when she began the Christian counseling program at Cairn University. Go Cairn. Where she then stayed on to counsel in the College Counseling Center and teach from 2011 to 2019. Sarah has taught both undergraduate and graduate courses in counseling and also was the director of practicum and internships for the Master's Counseling Program at Cairn University. Sarah eventually provided supervision for student interns and in 2017 began counseling at Serving Leaders Ministries. In 2019, Sarah decided to accept the job at a developing gap year program in Puebla, Mexico, and took 6 months from counseling to do so. When the gap year program did not pan out, Sarah stayed in Mexico to train lay counselors through a developing organization called Gata de Esperanza.
Gota de Esperanza.
Gota de Esperanza. See, my Spanish is getting better already. She counseled online through Serving Leaders Ministries once again, so that she would not need to raise support and could remain active in the field while doing pro bono counseling work in Mexico. While in Mexico, Sarah led a basic listening skills training group for a church group that wanted to love their community well. She directed a grief share group and trained 3 individuals in lay counseling. Sarah is still meeting with, training, and supervising those 3 individuals, but now from a distance due to her move to Puerto Rico. Now in Puerto Rico, Sarah continues to provide counseling online while also assisting her husband at their local church where he is pastor. Sarah has a heart for cross-cultural ministry and intercultural relationships as she counsels in diverse contexts. Her counseling focuses and training her counseling focus and training are in trauma, family of origin, wounding and healing, interpersonal relationship work, anxiety, and depression. Wow. So, as you can see, these are two dynamic individuals. I don't know about you, but I am very much impressed by the both of them. So, again, I want to thank you, Sarah and Eliudis. But before we get into the questions, I am fascinated by the missions work that the two of you have done. So, if you could just take a few minutes and talk about the missions work, particularly what it was that drew you to missions in the first place, because I know missions is not an easy thing to engage in. So, talk to me a little bit about that.
¿Entendiste?
No totalmente.
¿Qué es lo que como atrayó a misiones? Atrajo.
¿Tú puedes empezar? ¿O es
No,
para
tú
mí?
primero. Es más para ti, creo.
Bueno, pues a mí me atrajo saber que había gente que no había escuchado del evangelio porque yo cuando era adolescente no sabía.
So what he's saying that what brought drew him to missions is hearing that there were people that hadn't ever heard the gospel. He didn't know that until he was an adolescent.
Entonces, pues, cuando escuché de un grupo que iba a salir a la Amazonía, pues quise participar con ellos.
So when he heard of a group that was going to the Amazon, he wanted to participate with them and go.
Y fui, y pues todo lo que vi, todo lo que experimenté, pues básicamente cambió el resto de lo que sería mi vida.
So he went, and everything that he participated in and everything that he saw changed the rest of his life.
Wow. Okay. So, given that, Eliudis, you said that when you heard that there were people in places that had not heard the gospel before, that sounds as if you yourself were extremely impacted by the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I'm wondering, that sounds like you most probably grew up in a home that was Christian or a Christian environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you say that when you went on that missions trip, it changed your life forever. Talk to me about some of those changes.
Ok, las prioridades.
Priorities.
El uso del tiempo y el uso del dinero.
The use of time and money.
Básicamente, pues esos aspectos de la vida, pues cambiaron, como las decisiones, básicamente ya las decisiones eran enfocadas en cómo ser parte de lo que Dios está haciendo en el mundo.
His decisions were changing to be more about what God wanted to do in different parts of the world.
Wow. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So I know I have some other questions, but I'm really fascinated by missions work. So I'm wondering, what was the most meaningful or impactful experience that you had, Eliudis, while you were in the process of doing missions work?
¿Cuál fue la experiencia más
impactante?
¿Desde siempre o...?
En misiones, mientras que estabas haciendo.
Eso está bien difícil.
He said that's really hard.
Yeah, I imagine there were a lot of them, and that's what makes it hard to narrow down. Yeah,
una de las primeras cosas que pasaron que nunca me habían pasado acá en Puerto Rico.
One of the first things that happened that had never happened here in Puerto Rico.
Fue con los indígenas guaraos que logré, orábamos por ellos, no solamente yo, sino el grupo que salió de Puerto Rico y sanaban, estaban enfermos y sanaban.
When they would pray for people from the tribe, the Guarao, who are in the Amazon, they would pray for them because they were sick or stuff like that, and they would be healed.
Wow. That's amazing. You know, we read about healings in the Bible and we pray for healings, and I'm always so in awe when healing does take place. Because it's one thing to read about it in scripture, it's one thing to pray about it, but when you actually experience that power of God, it absolutely can be life changing. And I would imagine that seeing the power of God manifested in that way, for the people to whom you were ministering, greatly impacted their own spiritual experience, and maybe even help their belief in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
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 Oh.
Yes.
So, when a couple comes from different cultural background, Sarah, I'm sorry, talk to me about your missionary experience as well.
So I grew up going on missions to Bolivia, actually, which is kind of where I developed a heart for the Spanish language. I would say I always wanted to be fluent in Spanish, but I never, when you live in the US and you're not around Spanish speakers, you just never end up learning the language.
Mm-hmm.
But so I had always been interested in missions work. In fact, when I started counseling, I was like, is this really what I want to do? I don't know. And throughout the whole program, I was like, is this really what I want to do? And even as I'm teaching, I was like, is this really what I want to do? So when I got the job in Mexico, I was really excited because I felt like this is like something like I'd always wanted to do. So then when it all crumbled, I was like, oh no. But yeah, it was really cool then getting to do missions, teaching lay counselors, and incorporate counseling in missionary work and getting to be a support to missionaries. Also, that was really cool to get to do all of those things, have a more supporting role.
So missionary work was pretty much in your blood from an early age, it seems.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, we would go as a family to, sorry for the noise, but we would go as a family to Bolivia, to the same tiny village. It took 10 hours to get there in a truck. You stood up in the back of a truck.
Wow.
And had to duck so you wouldn't get hit by branches.
Wow.
So we went to the same village for 5 years. So, yeah.
Wow. So I know this is not one of the questions I had, but I'm always curious about a couple's love story. So tell me about how you two met and how that love story developed.
¿Tú quieres empezar?
No, tu versión.
Okay, I'm going to give my version, he said. So basically, when I was in Mexico, he was here, it was COVID. And we were both on this website that's called Called Together, which is for missionaries to meet for dating purposes, but then also just for collaborating and stuff like that. So he sent me a message and we started talking and we kept talking. And then he came to visit me actually during the height of COVID, flew all the way to Mexico. And then I flew to Puerto Rico during COVID and we went back and forth.
Yeah.
So we pretty much had an online video relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the rest, as they say, was history. Right? So those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat. So, when a couple comes from different cultural backgrounds, sometimes outsiders tend to focus on and be curious about the couple's differences. But I'd like to start by talking about the things that you have in common from a cultural perspective.
¿Quieres empezar ese?
Bueno, que nos gusta viajar y explorar.
We like to travel and explore.
Nos gustan también los deportes.
We both like sports.
La naturaleza.
Nature. Missions, obviously.
Yes.
Y que pues nos gusta leer.
We like to read.
Y ¿qué más tenemos en común?
I think we are also both like to relax. So neither of us are we like doing fun things and adventure and stuff, but we're not we constantly have to be doing something and we can't sit still. We're both able to sit still. And obviously we both love Jesus.
Yes.
So, and I think we both tend to focus on love as like the way that we seek to serve in different ways. But he has a very cool story about just God speaking to him about just living to love others.
Yes. Yeah, and I know that love is really big with you, because I recall when we would be in our group. That's one thing, as a phrase you would say very frequently, about loving well, about loving someone else well, whether it's your partner, your friend, a family member, or anyone with whom you come into contact and have relationship. You all would always talk about loving well. And that's a phrase I kind of stole from you, because I use it from time to time myself. But Sarah, I would imagine that, having grown up doing missions and being involved and having spent time in Mexico and other places, that living in Puerto Rico now was not the same culture shock that you may have experienced had this been your first time in that environment.
I would say it's actually been more culture shock.
Really? How so? Tell me.
I think because for instance, when I would go to Bolivia, it was 2 weeks. That's really short. And I never actually really experienced culture shock, if I'm honest. When I moved to Mexico, I moved there, but then it was COVID. I lived in an apartment by myself. So it's not like I was living with other people of that culture. I mean, I went to visit people and I hung out in their spaces. And obviously I learned Spanish because I spent a lot of time with people. Yeah. But it's one thing to be living in the same house with somebody that's of a different culture. And like then being fully immersed in the culture, because all of his connections obviously are Puerto Ricans. That are part of his denomination, which is very different than the denominations I grew up in. So really, I'm having multiple cultural shifts. It's marriage, we both have different family cultures. Then we both have different like ethnic cultures. Then we both have different denominational cultures, experiences. We both really experience different socioeconomic cultures as well. So it's a lot. It's been a lot.
Well,
but I'm okay.
All right. And from your perspective, which has been the most challenging to navigate?
I think probably communication, differences in communication in this culture, which then also applies to marriage, obviously, than in my experiences of communication. I think especially having been a counselor and most of my friends being counselors as well, that made it extra hard, I think. So I think that would be the most difficult is communication and learning. And I don't mean the language. I mean, learning how to understand the motives and intent of people when they communicate in a very different way. That's not direct A. It's more indirect. And so.
Okay, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense. And you made mention of difference in denomination. Yeah. What is the difference in those denominations?
So I grew up Presbyterian, then I was in some Baptist churches, then I was non-denominational. It was an intercultural non-denominational church that I went to for a long time that was actually run by Indians, second generation Indians. No, his church is more charismatic. So no speaking in tongues, no of the other people didn't believe in the, they're cessationists. So they don't believe in the other gifts, the use of the other gifts.
Yeah. And
so also his church is much more conservative, I would say, than the churches I've been a part of. So that's, and just the way church is run, like everything is very, very different. There's wonderful things about it. I would say my favorite thing has been being a part of the church. Not that there's things that not that there's not things that are hard about it, but I've really actually enjoyed getting to be a part of a different type of denomination.
Okay, right. I'm wondering about any differences in gender roles. I'm asking Pastor Eliudis.
¿Entiendes?
La
Papeles
diferencia
como de género. Hay diferencias en
en
papeles
lo
de
que puede
género.
hacer un hombre y lo que puede hacer una mujer.
Are you asking more like if we have different views on it, or?
No, I'm talking about from a cultural perspective.
Okay.
If
De una
you guys
perspectiva cultural.
faced any
Sí, hemos tenido
challenges
como
regarding your
desafíos
views on gender
entre
roles as opposed to his from a
tu
cultural
visión
perspective.
de el papel de género y mi visión. Yo no
O
creo,
sea,
pero
lo que le corresponde a la mujer y lo que le corresponde al hombre.
sí. Sí tenemos conflicto o dificultades sobre eso.
No, no hemos tenido conflicto en cuanto a los roles,
We haven't had conflict in terms of like the roles.
porque aunque ella dice, y es cierto que la denominación mía pues es muy conservadora,
Because even though his denomination, like I said, is very conservative,
pues en otras áreas pues somos muy abiertos porque las mujeres pueden ser pastoras y pueden enseñar hombres y pueden participar.
in other areas they're very open because women are able to be pastors, they're able to lead, they're able to participate.
Y en cuanto a la casa, pues aunque el latino muchas veces se caracteriza por un machismo,
So even though in like Latino homes they tend to be characterized by being machismo, which is like male dominance essentially.
pues en ese sentido, pues mi padre pues no era así, compartía los quehaceres del hogar y todo ese tipo de cosas y aprendimos a hacer todo, a cocinar, a planchar, a lavar ropa, a hacer todo lo.
His dad wasn't like that, so they learned to participate in all the household things, to iron, to cook, to help with everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank God.
You're benefiting from that in a way, right? So, and just Pastor Eliudis making mention of that, it sounds as if that would be not the norm, specifically in that culture.
Como eso no sería normativo por tu
¿Dónde?
cultura. ¿O sí o no? ¿Qué piensas?
Lo de
La
participar
norma.
de los no es la norma. Básicamente hay muchos hombres que trabajan y que espera que cuando regrese la mujer haya hecho toda la casa y si no está listo, pues siempre hay problema por eso.
Yeah, it's not the norm because there are a lot of men that they are the ones that work. When they get home, they expect that the woman has cooked and done all of that kind of things, and they're not happy if that hasn't happened.
Oh, okay. And if I'm understanding correctly, for you guys, and you in the context of your marriage, there's more shared responsibilities in terms of caring for the home and whatnot.
Yes.
Okay. And my sister Jackie was asking, is the denomination freer in their worship style than what you were familiar with?
Yes, I would say yes. I mean, even like I just got asked, he preached at a different church last night, and they're like, could you sing a song for us? When we arrived, they asked me to sing a song. And so that's normal. I'm now more used to it, to be asked like 30 seconds before or 1 minute before.
Yeah.
Why don't you lead us in a worship song? And there's no practice, and you just start singing, and then the band figures out how to play with you. It's very different. But it's fun.
A lot of spontaneity then.
Yes, a lot of spontaneity.
Well, that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending upon if you're the one called on with that in that nanosecond, and now you gotta be on.
Yep.
Okay. So, Professor Ensslen, I want to ask you, we Americans sometimes have a tendency to take things for granted. I know times when I've traveled, I and others from the United States have been referred to as those spoiled Americans because some things that we take for granted. So I'm wondering what has been your experience, if any, encountering that since you've been living, when you lived in Mexico and now living in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, I when I read that question, I wouldn't say that anybody has ever said that to me. I think more what people have talked about, like particularly in Mexico, is that the Americans think that they're right. Like, and that they know the right answer, and that they have something to offer, and their way is like the right way. Obviously, we're also very direct. It depends probably on what type of American you are, because there's lots of cultures in America, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, that would, I more heard about stuff like that, like Americans being not, they wouldn't use the word pushy, but we go in missions, you go in with your plan, and like you haven't even done that much studying of like the community or whatever, and
yeah.
You have the truth in terms of what the Bible says because you have your seminary degree and all that kind of stuff. I've heard more about that than us being spoiled.
So let me just ask you, Sarah, given that you have engaged in mission trips for many years, I'm wondering about what you have seen in terms of respect shown for the indigenous people.
There is respect. Because he sometimes gives me a hard time because he thinks I'm very hard on my fellow white missionary brothers and sisters, which I probably am. And he would say, he has learned great things from like white missionaries from the U.S. But I think the type of maybe respect that can be lacking is like the openness that and the desire to learn from, I don't even want to say the people you're ministering to, because that even can sound like, you're like the savior going in or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But that you have the heart of being a learner. I think that's the type of respect that is lacking often in missionary work. Yeah.
And I'm wondering about, because you mentioned earlier about learning something about the culture. And what has been your experience with that, what you've observed with other missionaries or missions trips? Was there that intent in learning about the culture of the people that you serve?
Yeah, I would say with all of the missionaries I've met, there is that intent, but to a certain point. So, and some people go further than others. But I would say with like the missionaries I met, all of them, and probably including myself, had a certain point where they stopped. And there were things that they valued about their culture that they put above continuing to learn and continuing to like surrender their cultural values.
Yo creo que el problema es que se creen que la cultura es mejor.
Yeah, he said he thinks that the problem is that, like the missionaries, for instance, believe that their culture is better than. So they learn about the culture, but then it stops at a certain point in that they believe their culture is better.
Cuando hay algún tipo de conflicto cultural, pues no pensamos que el otro puede tener algo de verdad, sino que yo soy el que sé y voy a enseñar, no voy a aprender.
Yeah.
Entonces,
when there's some type of conflict, relational conflict, for instance, that could be cultural. The perspective is that I know, like that my perspective is right, rather than maybe there's another way of viewing this or thinking about this.
Yeah. So there might be a bit of condescension in that.
Yes, I would say sometimes that happens in our relationship. I think that I'm right.
Well, that's I listen. I think that might not be because of culture. That might be because of gender. Because we all kind of think that sometimes as wives and women, Oh, and I want to give a shout out to Vanessa. Vanessa, thank you for chiming in. And since you're there, I know Brother Eric is sitting right next to you, so I want to thank him for being there as well. So I'm wondering if there are any differences in terms of the role that families play in the marriage, in-laws, extended families.
Entre como el papel que tiene tu familia y el papel que tiene mi familia. Eso es muy interesante realmente.
Bueno, hay diferencia ahora mismo.
There are differences right now, he said.
Okay.
no sé cómo explicar, pero si hay diferencia, pues tú has visto que tu papá y tu hermano se comportan de manera diferente a mi papá
Okay.
y mis
Yeah, like my
hermanos.
parents and my siblings relate differently than his dad and his siblings.
Así que la familia están jugando un rol distinto. De hecho, es bien distinto porque es súper distinto, no sé.
So it's very distinct. The families are playing very distinct roles.
Yeah. How so? In what way?
¿Cómo? ¿En qué manera?
La manera en que cuidamos, no, o sea, la manera en que ustedes se cuidan es diferente a la manera que nosotros nos cuidamos.
The way in which we like take care of one another is different than the way that in his family they would take care of each other.
La manera en que nos comunicamos
The way in which
es
we communicate
diferente
is
a la
very
manera que
different
ustedes se
in
comunican.
his family as opposed to in my family.
Ustedes comunican
We
más.
communicate a lot more in my family than in his family. He's also from a family. His mom passed away when she was 50.
No, yo tenía ya 30
No. Cuando ella tuvo 50 y cuántos años. Tu mamá.
53.
53. And so it's
Yeah.
3 men who are brothers and a dad. So that kind of changes the
whole
dynamics.
shifted. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Wow. Okay. So I just want to tell Vanessa, if you have any questions, Vanessa, you can write it in the chat or any comments that you might like to make. So I know in some cultures there is more of an open door policy in terms of family. Oh, just dropping in at any time without calling or texting first to see if it's all right to come over. So I'm wondering what that is like in the Puerto Rican culture.
¿Entendiste?
Ajá, ¿cómo cuánto?
Si la familia puede venir sin mandar un mensaje o algo así.
Sí.
En Puerto Rico, la familia, si puedes venir sin mandar un mensaje y la gente no sabe que vas a llegar.
Sí, todo el tiempo.
Yeah, all the time.
Pero a veces se envían mensajes porque puede ser que vengan y uno no esté.
But sometimes they send a message because they could go and then nobody's there.
Pero a mis abuelos nunca le avisábamos porque ellos ya no salían y siempre íbamos sin avisar.
Yeah, they would go visit their grandparents, for instance, without advising them that they were coming. One of his grandparents lived right across the street.
Oh.
And they all lived close by.
Y de manera milagrosa siempre había comida.
And miraculously, there was always food.
I guess that's a plus, right?
Yeah.
Well, that must be nice having your grandmother so close by. I think that's a huge blessing for both of you.
Well, they're not here anymore, but that was in the past. But it's okay.
Oh, in the past. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now,
una bendición.
Yeah, it was a big blessing. Now his dad lives in the U.S. One of his brothers lives in the U.S. And then his other brother lives an hour away. So we don't have anyone stopping over.
Oh.
Or we're not stopping over anywhere. So we're not experiencing that reality. But the time has already passed of that happening.
Okay. So Vanessa said, yes, we love our food. She's saying that because she's Puerto Rican.
Oh, okay. Vanessa is Puerto Rico. Does she speak Spanish so she understands everything we're saying?
Oh, yeah. She'll understand absolutely everything. So, Professor Ensslen, during the course of the communication between you and I, you mentioned something regarding the woman, the wife, not changing or hyphenating her last name after marriage. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so this is the same in Mexico as in Puerto Rico, although I feel like more Puerto Ricans now are changing their last name. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But basically, the man keeps his last name, which is his dad's last name first, and then his mom's last name. So he's Padilla Vega. So his dad is Padilla, but his dad is not Padilla Vega. His dad is Padilla Vasquez because that's
his mom's last. Oh.
Yeah. So technically, my name should be Sarah Ensslen Heritage because that's my mom's last name, but I did not decide to do that. But I did keep Ensslen. And he had something to explain about that too.
A mí me gusta la manera de aquí porque tengo un papá que es Padilla, pero también tengo una mamá.
He
Y es
likes the
Vega.
way that it is here because he has a dad whose last name is Padilla, but he also has a mom and her last name is Vega.
Y nos gusta utilizar los dos porque
We like to use both
no solamente tengo padre, tengo madre también.
because I have a dad and a mom.
Y fue una manera de honrar
It's a way to honor
Wow.
que ella pues
that
nos dio a
she
luz,
gave birth to us.
y sí, y pues siempre decimos los dos apellidos.
So we always say the two last names.
I love that. I love that. And it's also because I'm imagining seeing it up on a genogram or some sort of genealogy, and it might make it easier to trace because you have the last name of the mother and the father.
Yep.
It's already there.
Yep.
And then the next generation has the name of the mother and the father.
Right.
So then
so we would be called Familia Padilla Ensslen.
Yeah.
Okay. So your if you guys have children, your children's last name would be Padilla Ensslen.
Yep.
Wow. I love that.
Yep. Latino and German colliding.
No, I love that because actually when Frank and I had our first child, our daughter Sidel, I wanted to give her a hyphenated last name. I wanted it to be Mason Chase, the way my last name is. I wanted her to have it that way. But I absolutely love that. Okay.
Yep.
What did Jackie say? I never knew that is why Puerto Ricans had two last names. Yes. I never realized that either. I always just thought it was a middle name and last name. I didn't realize it was two last names to represent both parents.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to be pondering that for a while. I may, I think maybe that we should start that trend over here. I think it might be a great thing. So I'm wondering if there was ever any consideration to you guys moving and living in the United States.
Que sí, sí, siempre es una.
Yeah, it's always
una posibilidad.
Possibility.
Tengo mi papá, mi hermano en los Estados Unidos.
His dad and his brother is in the U.S. And his dad lives 30 minutes from my brother, and his brother lives 15 minutes from my sister.
Wow. So do they interact? Do they get together?
Well, my sister does with his brother and his wife, but his dad hasn't gotten together with my brother because his dad only speaks Spanish, so that wouldn't work.
Oh, okay. So are there other family members near where dad lives?
So my brother Michael and my parents live like 45 minutes from where his dad lives. So
no, I mean Pastor Eliudis' family.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
They live in Lancaster, but no hay familia que vive cerca de tu papá como otra familia.
Edgar es más cerca, está como 2 horas.
His brother's the closest, and that's 2 hours. He lives in Maryland. His brother.
Oh, okay. So since he only speaks Spanish, has he moved into a Spanish-speaking community to be able to navigate it easier?
Sí, que si él está entre comunidades hispanas o algo así. Mayormente va a una iglesia de hispanos.
Yeah, he goes to a church that's Spanish-speaking.
Y ya está retirado, que no sale
mucho. And he's retired, so he doesn't have to go out much.
Okay. So I guess that would make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So it sounds as if his church family helps him to navigate some of the needs that he may have to get met while he's there.
Yeah, and he did get remarried, so he and his wife has kids that live in Lancaster. I would imagine sus hijos hablan inglés. Her kids speak English. His new wife.
Oh, okay, okay.
They speak Spanish and English, so.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's a plus. That's a plus. So Vanessa said she was very passionate about not following Puerto Rican traditions here. She said when she got married, she dropped her maiden name and kept her husband's name. She said the quote unquote gringo way. I felt like my name was too long for that. Okay. So Vanessa, what would your, I don't know if you want to put it on here. If it depends on how comfortable you are. So, what would your last name have been had you followed the Puerto Rican tradition of taking the of not wait a minute. The Puerto Rican tradition is the woman doesn't change her name. She keeps her maiden name. And then when the children are born, the children take the husband's paternal name and the mother's maiden name.
Yeah,
right?
which is that would be the mother's paternal name as well. So it's my dad's last name. And his dad's last name is what our kids would have.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah. So even though it's the mother's maiden name, it's still paternal.
I don't know how you would say that, but yeah, it is paternal because it's my dad's last name. I mean, it's maternal in that I would be the mom, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I got it. So talk to me about the church that you guys are co-pastoring.
La iglesia es una iglesia pequeña.
It's a small church.
Aproximadamente 30 personas.
About 30 people.
Es una iglesia que ya va a cumplir 50 años, muy tradicional.
It's about to complete 50 years of like being in existence. It's very traditional.
Muy cooperadora.
It's very like everybody's contributing. So it's kind of more of like a community-based church where everybody is contributing to the function of the church.
Todos los fines de semana pues tenemos comida, compartimos.
Every time that we meet, we have food after the church service and spend some time together.
Y nos sentamos y dialogamos y
we
compartimos.
Talk, share.
Es una iglesia de corte pentecostal mayormente.
Yeah, it's a Pentecostal church.
So that means it's kind of lively.
Tiene vida. Sometimes, yeah.
¿Qué más pudiera hacer?
It is diverse in that, like, for instance, I mean, there...
Es parte de una denominación que también no es independiente.
Oh, yeah. It's part of a denomination. It's not like an independent church. There's like a concilio. Something that's unique about his church is that it actually meets on Saturday. It's not Seventh-day Adventist, but they believe in keeping the Sabbath still, so they still meet on Saturdays.
No como lo hacen los judíos.
But not like the Jews do it.
Es básicamente separar un día. Lo que pasa es que la denominación cree que debe ser ese día.
And the denomination believes that the day that you set apart should be Saturday still.
Okay.
So no condenamos y respetamos.
But they don't condemn other people who meet on Sunday, and they respect that.
Okay. So would it be in some ways similar to Seventh-day Adventists?
No.
No. Pastor Lewis, he shook his head real fast. It ain't nothing like that.
I'm sure. No, that's people's always response. So even when I would tell people that I'm switching denominations, that they meet on Saturday, everybody was worried for me initially. But they are a Bible-believing evangelical church. They just
happen to meet on Saturdays.
Meet on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Yep.
I get that. Yeah. Vanessa just wrote something. Fuego Pentecostal.
Pentecostal fire. That's what that means. The fire of the Holy Spirit.
All right. Thanks for that, sis. Thank you for that. So how would either of you advise or encourage couples with different cultural backgrounds, especially when they are considering residing in the country of one or the other, and one of them will be leaving from what has been familiar to them?
¿Qué consejo daría una pareja cuando una persona está saliendo a vivir en la otra cultura?
Bueno, no va a ser fácil.
It's not going to be easy.
Hay que tener paciencia.
You have to have patience.
Hay que tratar de entender el mundo del otro
You have to try to understand the world of the other person
Mm,
y amar.
and love
Y
mm.
para mí
for him,
mi definición personal
his
de
personal
amor
definition of love
es buscar el máximo bienestar
it's,
posible de la persona
is to
con la que
look
uno.
for the maximum well-being of the other person.
Wow.
I've heard that many times.
Sí,
I'm
pero
writing it
faltaba
down.
una
Oh,
parte.
I missed a part, he said in
Buscar
English.
el máximo bienestar posible de la
Look for the
persona que uno ama,
maximum. Wait,
aún
espera. Empezar de
The
nuevo.
maximum possible
Look
well-being.
for the maximum well-being
de la persona que
of the
uno ama,
person that you love,
aún a expensas de uno mismo.
even at your own expense.
Wow. Give me a minute. I'm writing this down. I know I can always go back, but I like writing stuff down. I love that. Looking for the maximum well-being of the other person or the person you love, even at your own expense. Wow. That is a beautiful definition of unconditional love,
See, it
a
is.
selfless love. That's beautiful. I absolutely love that. I may write this on my Instagram, but I promise to give you credit. I will have there, I will have Pastor Eliudis. I'll have it in quotes, I promise, and I'll make sure I give you credit because I love that. Maximum well-being of the person you love, even at your own
He said,
expense.
thanks to God.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, Professor Ensslen, what would you say to someone who is about to marry cross-culturally?
Yeah, I think the same kind of thing. It is hard. I think, all the addition of like the person who's moving to the other place, it is a lot. It adds more, right, to the hard, um, because you're adapting to another culture while you're adapting to marriage, and you're in the other person's communication culture. So even like with making friends, for instance, something that's been hard for me in the sense of, uh, finding people that talk about the kinds of things that I talk about. I think it's extra maybe hard for me since I'm a therapist as well, and I'm used to having like what we define as deep conversations.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think the beautiful thing about it is that my mind is being blown and transformed to, slowly it's being blown and transformed to have a broader vision and even like think more broadly and to be honest more deeply about, okay, well, what that the word deep, even using that word right now, like saying the word deep, if I were to say, oh, like us Americans have more deep conversations, that would be offensive to Puerto Ricans, right?
Right.
Because then it's like I'm saying they don't have deep conversations. So I have to qualify, okay, what is my definition of deep? And then how do Puerto Ricans connect deeply? Because they do connect very deeply. It just looks different than the way that we do. And in fact, sometimes we have these deep conversations with total strangers who we don't even know, which could probably be seen as being somewhat inappropriate, even though it feels like really good, to like go deep,
Yeah, yeah.
But whereas I would say Puerto Ricans are much more loyal and, not that Americans aren't loyal, but they like if you develop a deep relationship with somebody here and they decide to embrace you in their life, it's a very felt deep connection that means they would do anything for you, really, So anyway, your mind, be prepared to have, you have to be flexible and be prepared to have your mind very stretched and have more questions than you have answers and be comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. And I think that is great advice because sometimes people may have not a full understanding or maybe even somewhat of a misconception of what it may be like when you do marry cross culturally and relocate to another country. And would you also say that perhaps the one who is going to be relocating before they get married is to live in that culture for a little while?
It probably would help. It probably would help if it was possible. Yeah.
Mm,
Hmm.
mhm.
Yeah. Develop your own friendships and stuff like that so that you have like a base. Probably would be helpful.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we're doing okay.
What's been the best thing about it for you, Professor Enslin?
Um, the best thing about it. Um, I mean, I
Other
love
than
learning.
Pastor Ludis, of course.
Yeah. I love learning and I love being
Yeah.
stretched, even though sometimes I don't love it. But I think it's a privilege to be humbled
Mm,
repetitively.
mhm.
Um, so, and I think maybe some of the best parts about it too has been having somebody else who, uh, from a different culture, in this that is still getting to know me, right? That can point out things to me about myself that I wouldn't have necessarily noticed or realized or and I think something that's been a huge blessing is that Eliudis is very kind. So like even when he's pointing out, areas of growth, he does it in a kind way. But then he also, I think, affirms me. I tend to like second guess myself and my motives, and I tend to be
Mm,
policing myself and thinking about all the ways that I'm failing. And so he has been very like affirming in the sense of like telling me that I'm a really kind and loving person, even when I just treated him not very well because I was frustrated or whatever. That I think that's something I've been learning and relating to him is like really his unconditional love for me,
mm,
and that he still maintains the same view of me even when I'm not being the best version of myself.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. Um, you know, we all have our own particular set of biases in some way. And I'm wondering if, having been living in Puerto Rico now, if some previously unknown biases have come to the forefront for you where you have had to confront your own biases.
For me,
Yeah. Mhm.
I think about communication. I think that's still like a work in process.
Mhm.
But I think I going through a counseling program in particular, I learned a very specific model of communication and what it means to apologize, what it means to listen. Like I trained people
Mm,
regarding how to listen and what is the right way to listen.
mhm.
And I think even since I moved to Mexico, that's been kind of like slowly being stripped away, but it's still very difficult for me, like having that be my job, the way that I communicate with people still in counseling who are from my culture. Like to have that expectation of this is what I'm looking for to receive that means this. Um, because it's in your body too,
Yeah.
even like, and so I think that is a major one that needs some more undoing.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
to see like his motives and understand his motives when he's speaking, um, when it's just so very interesting because culturally you learn that if a person communicates this way, this means they have a good motive, and if they
Mhm,
communicate this way, it's not a good motive, right?
mhm,
So
mhm, mhm.
all of that has to be stripped away to see like his true heart and motive when your gut reaction is like that's not what I was looking for, I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm making sense, but yeah.
Okay. I got it. So, before we sign off, Pastor Eludis, is there anything else that you would like to share? Any final words? Anything?
Bueno, quiero dar las gracias por este, invitarme a mí y a ti.
He said he wanted to give thank you for inviting him and myself.
Y si algún día pues quiere venir para acá, pues
And if one day you want to come here, you're welcome.
Oh, listen, Puerto Rico is on my bucket list of places to travel. So, listen, I tell everybody when you invite me somewhere, you better mean it because I'm going to show up.
It is meant. You can come visit.
Oh, I thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate this, and I just pray that it's been a blessing to those who are listening now or may listen later. Because I'm a firm believer that time and distance, no obstacles for God. So I just want to thank you again, again, again. And Sarah, I just love you so,
Thanks,
so very much.
I love you.
I don't
too.
think you realize the impact that you had on myself, and I'm sure so many of the other students as well at Cairn University.
Oh, thanks.
So I want to thank you guys who have been joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure, and I invite you to come back again next week. I forgot what we're going to be talking about next week. I think, let me look on my calendar real quick. See if, we're going to be talking about a break versus a break up because some people say they're just on a break. I don't understand what they mean by that. To me, it's one or the other. It just seems like a little bit of a gray area. So we're going to be tackling that issue on next Sunday. My sister Jackie, thanking the both of you guys for being here and for sharing and for being so open. I really do appreciate that. So those of you who are watching, I'll see you on next week. Come back and remember what Marriage Beyond the Breaches motto is. No marriage, no relationship is beyond redemption. When both parties are committed to each other, committed to doing the work, and when you put God first, you put him in the mix, you can't go wrong. So no relationship is beyond redemption. Okay, bye-bye. I'll see you guys next time.